There were a couple things that have helped me greatly, but mostly this is what has helped me. In the beginning, there were two verses that I just repeated over and over again in my mind. The first was, keep me safe, O Lord, for in you I take refuge. And I had this sense that I needed God to keep me safe, spiritually, physically, and psychologically, to keep my mind steady. The other verse was from Psalm 103, which is, all my inmost being, praise your holy name, always pray and not give up. And I had this sense that I wanted to, or I just was part of me that I had to keep praising God, not for what had happened. Oh my goodness, not that, but for his presence in the midst of the difficulty. And then the book that helped me once I was ready to read any book on grief, I received 30 books within about a week. Didn't read any of them for a long time. And then I started reading them. And this one helped me so much. This is called Walking with God Through Pain and Suffering. And basically it uses the metaphor, the biblical metaphor of a fiery furnace, which is from Isaiah and 1 Peter. But it likens walking through grief being like walking through a fiery furnace, like a forge, something that reshapes you and molds you and makes you strong and beautifies you and purifies you. And so the structure of this is understanding the furnace, facing the furnace, and then walking through the furnace. But the heartbeat of this begins from the first page, where it says, there is no greater inner agony than the loss of a loved one. And then the rest of the book invites us to go higher as Christians, to go higher and deeper. And then it gives all kinds of testimonies and stories in here and all kinds of ways to go higher and deeper. But one of the things that struck a chord with me, so I thought I would share what helped me, is the idea of remembering the powerful themes of the Bible. And in fact, that's what we're going to be doing with the kids this year. As they go through their Bible study stories, we're going to be talking about helping them see the powerful themes that these stories are part of and how that can help us. But anyway, I started thinking about what Bible stories, mean a lot to me. And one of them is 2 Kings 6, where Elisha and a servant, briefly, Elisha's servant gets up early one morning, goes outside, and he sees that they are surrounded by all these soldiers and chariots and horses and spears and javelins from the much feared King Aram, the Arameans, who were there specifically to kill Elisha, which meant his servant would be killed too, of course. And so he goes running to Elisha, and Elisha comes out and sees all of this. And then he looks up and he says, "Oh God, open up the eyes of my servant so that he may see that those that are with us are greater than those that are with them." And with that, his servant looks up and he sees coming out of heaven thousands and thousands of beautiful angels with gold chariots and fiery chariots. And he realizes, and of course they are saved. Now, basically, Elisha knew something about the future that helped him in the present. And that's the theme I'm kind of pulling out of this. It's all over the Bible, really, that we are part of a big story. And knowing the end helps us now. C.S. Lewis kind of explains this further and better, and you've probably heard this, but it's the idea that in every epic story, there's an ordinary person that all of a sudden is transported into this, new world, a new reality, and there they join these kings and queens who are noble and wise and caring and compassionate, and they join them in this fight against some giant evil, which is worse than any evil on earth. And they persevere, and with great valor and self-sacrifice, they overcome. And then everyone lives for a long time in joy and peace. And then all of a sudden the ordinary person is transported to their ordinary life and they begin doing these ordinary things. But they are changed because they have a memory of a great power, a great beauty, a great truth that will never be overcome by evil. And it helps them in their ordinary days to be able to think clearly and be courageous and hold their life a little looser and go into the world and combat the evil that's there. So Colossians 3 says, I better read it because I have it memorized, but well, you know. Colossians 3 says, since then you've been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you have died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. And so we have the privilege of living almost as if we actually died with Jesus, were raised back from the dead, and are now living with all of that. And as Christians, that's our memory that shapes who we are. Basically, our memory of what Jesus did and what's going to happen in the future. So we have this big story of creation, and then the fall, and then Jesus comes, and then the new creation is going to come. But in between Jesus and the new creation, the church is beginning and revealing what it's like to live with God in the center to the world. And that's what we're called to do. Now, when David and I were married, we felt really very strongly that our call, and we just knew our call, was to love God and flourish the church and reach out to the world. And we did that. I mean, that was, even through all the ups and downs, just having the clarity of that call really helped us. Well, okay, what are we here for? This is what we're here for. And then it just dawned upon me, you know, and then when he died, it was like, I mean, we'd done that together and had been planning to do it, honestly, for 30 more years. That's what we were thinking, And I thought, but then it just dawned upon me, just about a month ago, that when David was dying, God was giving us both a new call, but it just wasn't the same one. God was giving David a call to die well, to maintain the faith, and then continue to love God and serve him, but in heaven, but in a new reality. And my call was to continue to love and serve God, but here on earth, this time not with him. Now, don't get me wrong. I would give anything to have David back. Anything. But it helps knowing the big story and knowing God placed me right here, and this is my calling, and this is my goal, and that's what he has for me, and I want to do it well. So that helps.